Tonight, we are not going to talk about wars, presidents, or moments that changed the world. There will be no heroes, no villains, no big decisions. Instead, we are going to drift quietly through the history of ordinary evenings in America. The kind of evenings that barely made it into anyone's memory, let alone a history book. Long ago, before glowing screens and endless scrolling, American evenings were, well, slow. Painfully slow, some might say. And for our purposes tonight, that is perfect. In the early 1700s, when most Americans lived in small towns or on farms, evenings arrived not with excitement, but with darkness. Once the sun went down, there wasn't much to do about it. Candles were expensive, oil lamps required effort, so people simply stopped doing things. Families would sit quietly after dinner. Someone might mend a sock, someone else might stare at a wall, not because the wall was interesting, but because it was there. If you listen closely, you can almost hear it. The gentle crackle of a small fire, the sound of fabric being folded, the soft sigh of someone who had already been awake since before sunrise and was now very, very tired. No one was chasing dreams at night. They were chasing sleep. As America slowly grew, evenings remained stubbornly dull. By the 1800s, towns had expanded, but excitement still did not arrive after sunset. Gas lamps appeared on some streets, but they didn't create nightlife. They mostly created shadows. People would walk home slowly, very slowly, not because they were relaxed, but because there was no reason to rush. Home looked the same whether you arrived early or late. Inside, dinners were simple: bread, soup, something boiled for longer than necessary. After eating, families stayed seated, mostly because standing again felt like too much effort. Conversation was minimal. Someone might mention the weather, someone else would agree, and that was often the highlight of the evening. In the late 1800s, newspapers became more common. This added a new kind of evening activity, reading the same paper very, very slowly. Articles were long, headlines were calm, nothing screamed for attention. People read about train schedules, local council meetings, crop yields. Occasionally, someone would fall asleep mid-article, the paper gently sliding onto the floor. No one would comment on it. That would have required energy. Then came electricity. Now, you might expect excitement here, but don't worry, it didn't arrive immediately. Early electric lights were harsh and unflattering. They didn't make evenings lively, they just made people aware of how tired they already were. Homes were illuminated just enough to see how worn the furniture was. Chairs creaked, tables had scratches, everything felt permanent and unchanging. Evenings stretched on. By the early 1900s, radios entered American homes. At first, families gathered around them with curiosity, but radio programming was slow. Voices were calm, music was gentle. Announcements were formal, pauses were long, silence was respected. Listening to the radio often made people drowsier than silence ever had. Dinner was eaten, dishes were washed, the radio murmured on. Someone leaned back, someone else closed their eyes, not fully asleep, just resting them. This was considered a productive evening. During the 1940s and 1950s, after long days of work, evenings became sacred in their boredom. Television arrived, but early TV shows were quiet. Cameras barely moved, people spoke slowly. Commercials explained things carefully, sometimes too carefully. People sat on couches, not reacting much. Laugh tracks hadn't fully taken over yet. Nothing demanded laughter. People simply watched, and blinked, and occasionally nodded off. As suburbs expanded, evenings became even more predictable. Dinner around the same time, the same chair turned on, the same programs week after week. There was comfort in knowing exactly what would happen and when. In the late 1900s and early 1990s, evenings gained color but not speed. Sitcoms were brighter, but routines stayed the same. After dinner, people sat. After sitting, they continued sitting. Remote controls meant less movement. Recliners meant even less. Evenings grew quieter, not louder. By the time the 1990s arrived, Americans had more options than ever, but still chose familiar ones. TV reruns, old movies, the same snacks, the same spots on the couch. Even when the internet appeared, early evenings remained calm. Dial-up connections were slow, pages loaded gradually. Waiting became part of the experience. People stared at screens, listening to the hum of computers, feeling their eyelids grow heavy while nothing in particular happened. And now, here we are. Modern American evenings are full of content, but strangely empty of urgency. Endless shows, endless videos, endless scrolling, and yet the body still remembers something older. It remembers the candlelight, the radio hum, the newspaper slipping from tired hands. No matter how advanced the world becomes, evenings still pull us toward rest, towards stillness, towards sleep. And so tonight, as this very boring history quietly fades into the background, there is nothing you need to do, nothing to learn, nothing to remember. Just let the long, uneventful story of ordinary American evenings do what it has always done best. Slow everything down. Let your thoughts wander. Let your breathing soften, and allow yourself to drift gently and quietly into sleep. As the evening settles further into the American night, very little actually changes. That, in a way, is the most important part of this history. In small towns across the country, porch lights click on one by one, not dramatically, just a soft, quiet click. Moths gather, someone notices, no one does anything about it. Cars pass occasionally, their tires making a low, distant sound against the road. The sound fades quickly, leaving behind a deeper silence than before. Inside homes, clocks tick, not loudly, just enough to remind everyone that time is still moving, even if nothing else is. In earlier decades, before air conditioning became common, summer evenings were spent sitting near open windows. Screens rattled slightly in the breeze. Curtains moved just enough to be noticed, then forgotten. People listened to the night. Crickets, distant trains, a dog barking once, then deciding it wasn't worth the effort. Conversations drifted in and out. Someone would begin a sentence, pause halfway through, and decide the ending wasn't necessary. Silence took over again. In the mid-20th century, after dinner dishes were stacked and dried, kitchens became quiet places. Lights were turned off in rooms no longer needed. Hallways dimmed. Bedrooms waited patiently. Nothing rushed anyone toward sleep. Sleep arrived on its own schedule. Television programming ended earlier back then. Late-night sign-offs were calm and respectful. An anthem might play. A flag might appear. Then the screen faded to static. That static sound, soft and constant, became a lullaby for many households. People didn't ask what to watch next. There was nothing next. They simply turned the TV off. As decades passed, evenings became slightly brighter but never truly louder. Lamps replaced overhead lights, reading chairs developed permanent impressions, coffee tables gathered magazines that were never fully read. Someone might flip through a catalog, not to buy anything, just to look. Pages turned slowly, occasionally backward, occasionally forward, no destination in mind. In colder months, heaters clicked on and off. The sound became familiar enough to be ignored. In warmer months, fans hummed steadily, moving air without making decisions. American evenings learned the art of being uneventful. By the time digital clocks replaced analog ones, something was lost, the gentle ticking. But something else remained, the sense that night was not meant for productivity. Even when people told themselves they would stay awake a little longer, their bodies disagreed. Eyes grew heavy, shoulders sank, breathing slowed without permission. Somewhere, a lamp stayed on longer than necessary. A book rested open on a chest. Words blurred into shapes, then into nothing at all. Outside, streets emptied, stores closed, signs dimmed. Parking lots sat quietly, holding nothing but lines painted on pavement. No one thought about them. They simply existed. And this is the strange comfort of boring history. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't ask you to remember dates or names. It doesn't build to a climax. It just continues, softly, until you no longer need to. If your thoughts wander now, that's perfectly fine. If you miss a sentence, that's even better. The story does not mind being ignored. It has been ignored for centuries, and it will still be here tomorrow evening, doing absolutely nothing, just as it always has. As the night deepens, American houses settle into their familiar shapes. Floorboards adjust quietly. Walls hold the day's warmth just a little longer. Somewhere, a refrigerator hums, a steady, dependable sound that has outlived many conversations. Bedrooms remain simple places. Lamps glow softly. Alarm clocks wait patiently for a job that will come much later. No one is thinking about morning yet. There is still plenty of night left to do nothing. In older homes, radiators knock gently, not because anything is wrong, but because that is simply what they do. People hear the sound and barely register it. It blends into the background, like breathing. Sheets are smoothed, pillows are adjusted once, then again, then left alone. Outside, neighborhoods become evenly quiet. Not completely silent, just evenly so. A distant highway whispers. An airplane passes overhead, unnoticed by most. Porches that were once used now sit empty. Rocking chairs remain perfectly still, as if they've decided they've rocked enough for one day. In decades past, some Americans kept diaries. Evening entries were brief. Nothing much happened today. And that was enough. Those notebooks were closed gently and placed on nightstands, where they waited days, sometimes weeks, before being opened again. In the 1960s and 70s, kitchens still smelled faintly of dinner long after the dishes were done. Coffee pots were rinsed but not put away. There was always the possibility of another cup, though everyone knew it wouldn't happen. Living rooms darkened except for one lamp, left on out of habit more than need. Shadows grew longer but remained harmless. Televisions, now off, reflected the room faintly. A couch, a chair, someone half asleep. Nothing worth filming, nothing worth sharing, nothing worth remembering. And yet, these were the moments that filled most of life. Late-night radio once belonged to truckers, insomniacs, and people who simply didn't want the silence to be too loud. Voices came through softly, slightly distorted, speaking to no one in particular. The hosts talked slowly. Callers took their time. Pauses were allowed to exist. Sometimes a song would play that no one requested. Sometimes it ended without applause. Eventually, even the radio was turned down, not off, just lower. In modern times, screens glow late into the night, but even they grow tiring. Bright images lose their sharpness, stories blur together. Scrolling becomes slower, then stops entirely. A phone rests on a chest. A tablet slides onto a pillow. A laptop stays open, forgotten. The room grows darker, not suddenly, gradually, as if the night itself is being dimmed. Breathing becomes deeper. Thoughts lose their edges. Tomorrow feels far away, too far to worry about. And this is where boring history always leads. Not to an ending, not to a lesson, just to rest. Because for generations, American nights have done the same quiet thing. They have waited patiently for people to stop thinking, stop planning, stop remembering. They have invited everyone to simply drift. And if you find yourself drifting now, that means the history is working exactly as it should. Somewhere in the middle of the night, time becomes less precise. Minutes stretch. Hours soften around the edges. Clocks still move, of course, but no one is watching closely enough to notice. In quiet American homes, the smallest sounds become noticeable. The faint click of a cooling oven, the soft thud of ice shifting in a freezer tray. A house settling into itself, as if getting comfortable. Long ago, before central heating and cooling, people were more aware of these sounds. They recognized them not as interruptions, but as reassurance. The house was still there. Everything was fine. Beds creak slightly when someone shifts, not because they're uncomfortable, just because the body is finding a better way to rest. Sheets rustle, then stillness returns. In earlier generations, nightlights were small and dim. They weren't meant to illuminate anything important. They existed simply to remind people that they weren't completely alone with the dark. Hallways stayed quiet. Doors remained closed or half open, depending on habit. Each home had its own rules, followed without discussion. In many places, the outside world pauses at night. Offices darken, stores lock their doors, gas stations glow quietly, attended by no one in particular. Parking lots sit empty, their lines stretching nowhere. Shopping carts rest in loose groups, unmoving. Nothing is expected of them. In the middle of the 20th century, newspapers were delivered early in the morning, long before anyone woke up. At night, they were already waiting, folded neatly, full of events that had not yet happened. But for now, the future stays politely out of the way. Late-night television, when it exists at all, becomes slower as the hours pass. Programs repeat, voices grow softer, even advertisements seem tired. Eventually, someone turns the volume down, just a little, not enough to hear words, but enough to hear sound. That sound blends into the room, becoming part of it. Outside, streetlights hum faintly. Their glow spills onto empty sidewalks, revealing cracks that have been there for years. Leaves sit undisturbed. No footsteps pass. In suburban neighborhoods, mailboxes wait at the edge of driveways, empty and patient. Flags hang still. Lawns rest. The entire country seems to take a quiet breath. And during this part of the night, thoughts begin to lose their structure. Memories float by without detail. Tomorrow exists, but without urgency. Plans fade into vague intentions. Sleep doesn't arrive all at once. It approaches slowly, carefully, as if not wanting to disturb anything. And boring history has no objection to that. It has always been content with small moments, unnoticed routines, and evenings that dissolve quietly into morning. There is nothing more to explain, nothing to conclude, just the soft continuation of night, doing what it has always done, across countless ordinary American homes. The deepest part of the night arrives without announcement. No bell rings, no signal appears. It simply becomes quieter than before. At this hour, even familiar sounds seem farther away. A distant train horn stretches thin across miles. Wind moves through trees with no particular direction. Somewhere, a clock changes the hour, unnoticed. In American towns and cities alike, streets rest. Traffic lights continue their cycles, green to yellow to red, for no one at all. They do not mind being ignored. Office buildings stand dark, their windows reflecting nothing. Desks wait exactly as they were left. Papers stay in place, coffee cups dry quietly. In houses, sleep deepens. Breathing finds a steady rhythm. Dreams begin, not with stories, but with fragments, shapes, half-remembered places. There is no need to follow them. Long ago, people believed night was meant for stillness, and stillness for recovery. They did not try to fill every moment. They allowed hours to pass without purpose. That tradition continues, even now. Refrigerators hum, air conditioners cycle on and off, heating systems respond gently to falling temperatures. These machines work quietly, without asking for recognition. Pets shift in their sleep. A tail moves once, then stops. They understand night better than anyone. In rural areas, fields lie dark and empty. Barns rest. Fences stretch on without comment. Roads run straight through nothing at all. In cities, high-rise windows form dark patterns. A few lights remain on, but they are rare, lonely, and unimportant. Late-night diners stay open, mostly out of habit. Coffee is poured slowly, plates are stacked neatly, conversations are soft and brief. No one rushes. Time moves, but gently. And in this gentle movement, the history of boring American nights continues exactly as it always has, unremarkable, uncelebrated, and completely reliable. Nothing changes. Nothing needs to. The night holds everything steady while the country sleeps. Somewhere just before morning, the darkness grows thinner. Not brighter, just less heavy. No one notices this shift while it happens. It arrives too gently for that. In homes across America, blankets are pulled a little closer. A pillow is turned to the cooler side. Someone sighs, not from worry, but from comfort. This is the hour when even dreams slow down. They lose their stories and become sensations instead. A feeling of walking without direction, a sound without a source, then nothing at all. Outside, the world stays mostly still. Streetlights continue their quiet duty. Sidewalks remain empty. The air feels paused, as if waiting for a signal that hasn't come yet. Long ago, farmers used this hour to wake early, but most people now sleep through it. The night guards their rest without complaint. In old neighborhoods, houses sit close together. Their windows face each other, sharing the same darkness. Curtains do not move. Lamps stay off. In newer neighborhoods, homes stand farther apart, separated by lawns that look identical in the dark. Driveways curve gently, garages remain closed. Everywhere there is order without effort. Appliances continue their low, steady sounds. A dishwasher finishes its cycle. A furnace clicks off. A fan slows, then starts again. These sounds mean nothing urgent. They simply mean things are working. In decades past, this was the quietest hour on the radio. Some stations played soft music. Some played nothing at all. Dead air was not considered a problem. Silence was acceptable. Across the country, sleep holds its ground. Bodies rest. Muscles loosen. Minds release the day without needing to understand how. And boring history, as always, is content to stay here, in this uneventful space between yesterday and tomorrow. There is no ending to reach, no final thought to offer, just the slow, steady continuation of an ordinary American night, doing what it has always done best. Just before the first signs of morning, the night becomes especially careful. It moves gently, as if not wanting to wake anyone too soon. In many American homes, clocks glow faintly. The numbers change, but no one sees them. Time passes quietly, the way it prefers to. Breathing stays slow and even. A hand rests where it fell hours ago. Blankets rise and fall with steady rhythm. Outside, the air cools slightly. Dew settles on lawns unnoticed. Cars remain parked exactly where they were left, a thin layer of moisture forming on their windshields. Porches wait. Steps wait. Doors stay closed. Somewhere far away, a delivery truck moves through empty streets. Its sound is brief, then gone. The quiet returns, undisturbed. In the past, milk bottles once appeared at doorsteps during this hour. They clinked softly and then stood still, doing nothing at all until morning. That small sound is gone now, but the stillness remains. In apartment buildings, elevators rest between floors. Hallway lights stay dim. Shoes line entryways in quiet rows. No one checks messages. No one plans ahead. The world is allowed to pause. Even cities, usually impatient, surrender to this moment. Subway stations sit empty. Platforms wait without purpose. Schedules exist, but not yet. The night stretches itself thin, preparing to leave without ceremony, and boring history stays true to its nature. It does not announce change. It does not rush toward daylight. It simply continues, calmly, holding everything steady a little longer. This is the hour when nothing new begins. The night lingers, not because it must, but because it can. In houses across the country, sleep is deep and uncomplicated. There are no alarms yet, no reminders, no expectations, just rest, uninterrupted. A ceiling fan turns at its lowest setting. Curtains remain still. The air feels settled, as if it has decided not to move. Outside, streets look wider in the dark. Lines on the road fade gently. Crosswalks wait without purpose. Long before anyone wakes, small signs of morning prepare quietly. Birds shift in trees, but do not sing yet. The sky lightens almost imperceptibly, as though unsure whether it's allowed to move. History rarely mentions these moments. They are too quiet, too uneventful, too easy to miss. And yet, they happen every night. In earlier centuries, candles burned low at this hour. Flames grew small and steady, then disappeared without drama. People slept through it all. Today, lights stay off. Screens are dark. Even the machines seem tired. Somewhere, a thermostat clicks once. A refrigerator hums a little louder, then settles back down. The sound blends into everything else. There is nothing to respond to, nothing to solve. The country rests in this shared pause, millions of homes breathing at their own pace, unaware of one another. This is not a turning point. It is not a climax. It is simply the continuation of an ordinary American night, and boring history is happy to stay right here.